Welcome to Keto Rehab. I have Dr. Julie Brown here today, who I'm going to interview and introduce you to her. She is the creator of Keto Rehab. So I want to get into a little bit of who you are and what led you down this path.
Well, you said it. I'm Julie Brown. I am a doctor of chiropractic. That is my license. That's the umbrella that I work under. I have a master's in clinical neuroscience, and I focused on concussion and fatty acid profile. I have a diplomate in chiropractic neurology and a fellowship in traumatic brain injury and rehabilitation. So I mostly live in the brain. People think chiropractic and they think rack and crack. That's a, term that people use. And I do adjust people. I do still do physical medicine, and I do that with the neurology as well. But I come from a different viewpoint. I start with the brain.
Got it. Okay. And I know that a lot of people have some misconceptions about medical doctors versus DCs versus there's a lot of different credentials. Can you
Mm-hmm.
go into depth on the education you've had and how you've been able to go above and beyond uh, other than most chiropractors?
Yeah. I listen to a lot of great podcasts of people who eat like I do, have a lifestyle like I do, and they say all doctors this. But the reality is they're kind of not all the same. Medical doctors get zero nutrition training, and that's no offense to them. That's not what they study. That's not their philosophy. Chiropractors do. We have our pre-med recs that we have to do, and then our schooling is 3.5 hours. I'm sorry, 3.5 years year round of schooling. So it's 5 academic years. People think we go to a community college. No, we get the name doctor because we can diagnose. That's what we do. It is our philosophy that is different. We heal more with, not heal, we help people heal with natural medicine more than we do just, prescribing a medication or doing a surgery or that type of thing. So our approach is a little different. And when it comes to the nutrition part, which is really what this class is about, and lifestyle, chiropractors get a year of nutrition. People say, oh, doctors don't get any. Well, this doctor does. Doctors of chiropractic get a year of nutrition in school because that is the philosophy of helping people get better. So that's a big difference. You can go to any state, go look up the prereqs for a medical license and a chiropractic license, and you can see the hours of breakdown to what you get in school and what you have to study. I learned very little on not really delivery of babies, but we had to learn about pap smears and prostate exams, that type of stuff. I don't do those in my practice, but there are some small towns in which that may be the only person that does it. So obstetrics and I think pharmacology are the ones that medical doctors do many more hours on, but we do more on diagnostic and well, just anatomy in general.
Wow, okay. Thank you for the distinguished thing there. I know that you mentioned before that you have your master's in clinical neuroscience. And I know that a lot of people don't understand truly what that means. Can you go a little more in depth into that, please?
Yeah. So a master's really is a mastering. As I was going through the program, I was like, oh, this makes sense because if you can't write it, you probably don't know it. If you can't make it easy or reword it, you can't know it. So my program was brutal. I'm not going to lie. I've talked to other people who have done master's programs and they made vision boards, and I'm like, what kind of program is that? Mine was brutal. It was through the Carrot College. I was in the first cohort. It was so brutal. I graduated with the second cohort, but it was my thesis by the end was like 384 pages, I think, all said and done and referenced. And we wrote about from when egg met sperm and then the neurological, the genetic expressions and everything to develop the whole nervous system. And then we had to apply clinical aspects with each paper. So I learned genetic things that I never thought I would learn. But I got to know how to read research better, and I go to that more than I would like a textbook to find information. I like to go look at the research, and doing all that has kind of led me down, this wanting to create Keto Rehab.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously you're understanding the nervous system is dysfunctions and how it's supposed to work, right? And the disorders, so you can apply that to your practice. I was also curious as to the brain traumatic and the fellowship that you have with rehabilitation and concussion. Can you go into a little bit with that as well?
Yeah, so I have a diplomate and a fellowship. Both of those are credentials that you earn after you have a license, like after you're already a chiropractor. So I went through the Carrick Institute because they are the ones who really created it and nobody knows it better. And so I did my diplomate in chiropractic neurology. So again, I changed the way I look at things. People say, "Oh, this bone's out of place." It's not about that. The question is why are the muscles tight around that joint? And then my question is, do muscles contract on their own? No, they do not. They are always under tonic control of the nervous system and therefore the brain and the sensory information. So I do a top-down approach, not just come in, here's what I feel in the body and I adjust. Yes, adjustments are great, but I look at the whole system of it. So my diplomate is in chiropractic neurology, and then I did a fellowship in traumatic brain injury and rehabilitation. So we got really big into eye movements. The Neurology of Eye Movements book is brutal and brilliant all at the same time. But we know how the brain functions. We can test things objectively to see what's functioning or not functioning compared to normative values. And then we do therapies to either, if we find an area is overworking, can we stimulate another area to dampen that down? Do we need to activate another area that will crosstalk and dampen it down? Do I need to strengthen things? It just depends. I know the nervous system pretty intimately, and I have to figure out how to help it without medication or surgery. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that a medical neurologist is not essential because this person may need medication, they may need surgery, and I'm glad that those people exist. But many should see me first and then go on and do it. So both of those credentials are about 3 years long. And then you could do intensive, if you weren't busy, owning a business and whatnot. You could study more if you're super smart. That's the other question. And you sit for a board exam. There's governing bodies, and you have to get certified.
Got it. So you're saying that's not typical of most chiropractic
Correct.
practicing doctors. They don't go to neuroscience. They're not doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I
how.
was actually, when I went through the diplomate program, the first class that I went to that weekend, I had been in practice for 6 years and I was like, I shouldn't touch anybody because I don't know anything. And I went through a phase of being very angry, both with this keto rehab, this is later, but I was angry because why was this not our basic foundation? Chiropractic is neurology. An adjustment is a neurological consequence. We create tension and affect the sensory organs in the muscle and the tendon to create movement in the joint. And that information goes back up to the brain and resets the nervous system. So I went through a period of being kind of angry about my education. But the reality is any licensing board, the whole goal of that is to make sure that you are not going to hurt somebody. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to help someone, but the goal is to just protect the public and make sure that you don't hurt anybody. So I had to eat my words.
Got it. No, that
Not
makes a
eat
lot
my
of
words,
sense.
but get over it.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And so moving into nutrition and health, which is what this whole class is about, right? Knowing, your stance on health and nutrition, I'm curious your opinion on why people are so misunderstanding of the correlation of diet and functional health. How do we mix those together? Can you elaborate a little bit for us?
It's just bad education. In my opinion, it's trying to control people. The reality is it probably started before, but if we go back to the 1830s, there was a prophet with the Seventh-day Adventists, and she basically said that man shouldn't eat meat to stop cardinal desires, which is technically true because if you're not eating animal meats, you're not getting the proper fat and the fat soluble vitamins to make your hormones correctly, your testosterone or your estrogen. Those two things have huge effects on the frontal lobe and your ability to think and to function. Now, that being said, having high testosterone or high estrogen doesn't make you going out and procreating, because if the cardinal desires are to be stopped, that doesn't mean that because you have healthy levels, that's all you're going to do. But that was where it began. And so Kellogg's, of Kellogg cornflakes, he was a typecast for this woman, and they went on to send him to medical school, and it blossomed into this dietetics association, and that's where we are today. So people who sit on the governing board that make policies based on our food supply, that what your kids are fed in school, prisons, hospitals, technically what they think doctors can say or not say, that was all created by a consensus. So people agreed that this was a good idea, not because it was on controlled studies. They're actually done on surveys that they send out to people, and they say, yeah, it's the broccoli that's saving you and the meat that's killing you. but they've never done an experimental thing on any of those things to actually look at it. So there's this misinformation because it's feeding different policies and food supplies. It always comes down to money. And the only way to change it is through a grassroots effort, me interacting with my patients in front of me, or in this case, not a doctor-patient relationship, but in a classroom setting. That is the goal, to educate people and try to get them out of the brainwashed bad information we've been fed. Period. I mean, we're not getting healthier as a society, that is for sure.
Sure. I mean, there was a recent poll that 70% of Americans are no longer trusting their doctors. I think there's a shift towards that right now.
Yeah.
In your opinion, why do so many people seem to discredit chiropractic health versus medical doctors? And I know that you talked a little bit
Oh,
about,
okay. Yeah.
yeah,
So
could you,
there's a history of it. Technically, chiropractic and medicine started at the same time. But what went through, I can't remember if it's the Rockefellers or Rothschilds, I can't remember, but they had all this
Mhm.
oil and they wanted to make synthetic prescription pills, basically.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted to do. And at first, doctors were good because we had to know how to test, use the stethoscope, test reflexes, look at eye movements. That is what it is to understand the function of the body. Now it's like, oh, you have this symptom, don't even look at the patient, get my 15-minute codes in and off with prescription drugs. And that's not helping people. People actually want answers for what's going on. They don't want to just receive a pill. So part of to go against that 70% is I want to educate people in a classroom setting or re-educate people in a classroom setting. I think that's why people are not trusting their doctors. And again, if you don't understand the education of where these doctors learn, that's partly why we're doing this interview, to explain the different in the education. It's hard to have trust if you don't know what they know or what they don't know.
Absolutely. I would totally agree.
There was something else that I was going to say. It'll come at me and I'll interject it. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information we can go and a lot of questions I'm sure that we could, and I would want to narrow it down to save time because we'll do other videos as well. I know that before you had talked to me about, seed oils and in our current food and health, industry is pretty much putting lies out there, what is healthy and what isn't healthy. You said your master's in clinical neuroscience and you wanted to know about fatty acid profiles and concussion. How has that played a part in your practice and obviously teaching people this class?
Yeah, the fatty acid profiles, your saturated fats, your monosaturated fats, your polyunsaturated fats, and I go into detail of the class because I want people to understand it. But so many people don't do well with concussions, and the question is, are we diagnosing them better? Are people just getting them more often? Are people really inflamed, and so they're actually responding to these concussions more often? And all of those things could potentially be true. But I think the biggest impact is honestly that last part. If you don't have the foundation, if you don't have the nutrition, or you have inflammation and all these things going on, the mitochondria in the neurons in any cell in your body that needs mitochondria, which is most of them, they
Okay.
can't work. You've broken the energy machine and they can't work. So many people are so inflamed, it's a big issue. Now, one of the biggest things of inflammation is these different bonds on the fats. You have single bond, a saturated fat is single bond, carbon, carbon, carbon. That is a stable bond and it does not oxidize. When you get a double bond in there, you have one double bond in a monosaturated fat that can oxidize. And in these polyunsaturated fats, that means there's many double bonds, and those double bonds are oxidizable. Now, the thing with seed oils is it's huge full of PUFAs, these polyunsaturated fatty acids, so they are highly inflammatory. It used to be motor oil, and they said, oh, how can we turn this into something to consume? So they have to make it smell better. They don't add any nutrients to it. They have to do all sorts of things to create this oil that was never tested on human consumption ever. But people, I'm going to drink this glass of seed oil. All right, you do
Mhm.
you, but you have no idea what you're doing. We know in papers that I read, we know how much seed oil, sunflower oil in particular in this case, to give a baby chick to make its brain go useless so it can't work anymore. And you can't fix that. It's dead at this point. We know how much to give a baby chick. Why have we not set these standards for adult humans? That's a big issue. If you look at the trajectory of those seed oils and the health and telling us to eat all these plants and not meat, we have gotten really sick. So I think that partly that relates to the concussion story a lot because those seed oils too, omega-3 is a polyunsaturated fat as well. The chains are a little different, so they react a little different, but they can be oxidized equally enough. So with that, the brain prioritizes it, those polyunsaturated, because it wants a DHA in the brain to make the neuro connections work. More so than any of the fat, like on your skin, it doesn't go there as strong as it goes to the brain. So it's even worse. Plus, the half-life of linoleic acid is 2 years. So that means halfway in 2 years, if you didn't have any more, you're starting to burn through what is in your system. We need what is it? I should know this offhand. 2%, something super small, and we're now up at 20%. So it's a big issue. And I wonder if half people who can't drive on the road or get angry or can't function in life because we are getting weaker as a society is partly because of all of the seed oils possibly in the brain and the neurons are not functioning correctly. So I'm a
Sure,
little
that
bit
makes a lot of
passionate about it.
sense. You mentioned oxidative stress. We hear that a lot. We need to eat fruits and vegetables to combat the antioxidants, the oxidative stress that's going on. A lot of people are just really can't fathom how not eating fruits and vegetables can actually be healthy. Can you go into that a little bit more? Because I think we're all a little confused as to that.
Yeah, there are anti-nutrients in plants, period. It's pick your poison. We don't know how much poison it takes to hurt you, but we do know that we can't digest many of those things and it stops digestion. It's a big issue. I always ask people when I lecture, how many of you think blueberries have antioxidants? They all raise their hands. The reality is these plants, they actually are pro-oxidants. They go in and they make your system angry, and your system responds in kind by making glutathione, which is a natural antioxidant. But you can get that glutathione production by eating meat, having your B vitamins, hot, cold bath, sauna. Any of these things are going to also create glutathione. And you get glutathione by eating your sulfur amino acids that are in your animal meats, not in plants. So there's a lot of lies out there, and that is the hardest one for people to try to consume. Now, if people want to eat plants for mouth pleasure, that's fine. As long as you're getting your goals and what you want, I don't care. But if you're not hitting your goals, then you really need to question everything.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to question a lot of things. This brings me to you personally. Were there any, personal health issues that you were experiencing that led you down, the keto path, the carnivore path, or was it strictly just, what you learned and what you realized you didn't learn and being able to apply it?
It's an evolving story because in chiropractic school, in our nutrition class, when you're going through school and you're learning about migraines and you learn about tumors and stuff, and you get your first migraine, you think you have a tumor immediately, which may or may not have happened to me. But as you're studying through school, you apply things to yourself. And when I was in school, I had a great nutrition teacher, Deborah Kettler. You can look her up. I don't think she's practicing anymore, but I really enjoyed her. And one of the things we were talking about was the South Beach diet, which is not keto, but it's, you're getting rid of grains and whatnot. And in the first 2 weeks, trying to stay active and fit while you're in college is almost a joke. So I was trying to, be fit, and I would run, and I'd get like athlete-induced asthma. I'd get so much phlegm I couldn't run. My legs weren't tired, but my chest and my phlegm were. In those 2 weeks of getting rid of gluten, I had to go back and realize it was gluten that I got rid of. My athlete-induced asthma went away. So that was really eye-opening to me, to the power of food hurting you or helping you. We learned about ketogenic diet during that time, but I didn't learn more about ketogenic diet until later when I was studying concussion. And that is the most studied diet to help the brain, first off, which is part of that concussion rabbit hole. So I did that and I was like, oh, that's great. And then I eventually found out I would break out to dairy only on my hands. And in 2018, I decided to I had an exposure. I had a big old, it's like flaky skin is what I would get on my hand, almost like a sore. And in 2018, I decided to start ketogenic diet because I'm telling all my concussion patients to do it, but I'm not doing it myself. And I wanted to re-experience trying it. And within 2 weeks, my hips were moving, my knees felt better. And I was like, I didn't even know I had pain. And those were issues for me. I had no idea. And my mental health, I was stable. I think I only cry sometimes at real sentimental Hallmark commercials. I don't cry. Even if I get angry, I can come down to a normal level. I don't get depressed. I have fought depression, most stable I have ever been. But I started in November and then I did a fast in January and I said, I want to eat dairy. So I started with some raw butter and I never broke out. And now I am, 5.5 years in, actually six years this week,
Wow.
that I
Wow.
haven't, that I eat dairy and I'm fine. Actually, it's 6 weeks this year that I haven't had a lick of alcohol, not because I had an issue. I just didn't want to drink alcohol to burn ketones. I wanted to burn ketones on my body. That was the whole plan. So it's been 6 years, which is pretty crazy. But the reality is I
Wow.
didn't have anything in particular wrong with me, or at least I didn't
Okay.
think I did. And what I say to people now is you don't know what good feels like until you feel good. And that is the hardest thing to get people over that hump. They think they're fine. Oh, I'm good. I'm fine. No, you don't know what good feels like. At least get to a ketogenic high and see what it feels like so that you have an idea. So that's my
Definitely
story.
can attest to that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I didn't know what good felt like until now. So thank you for sharing all that with me. And that brings me to, the name of the class, Keto Rehab.
Mhm.
What inspired you to give it that name? Because rehab is really associated with some other things that people
Yeah.
might think about, but I'd like you
Yeah.
to elaborate a little bit on that for me.
Well, to talk about the things I like about rehab is a lot of them are group settings and the mindset would ultimately be to be positive and not complaining and repeating the story. I want people to reframe their mindset and move forward. That's the ultimate goal. And rehab, if you break a leg, say you were squatting before you break leg and you couldn't for a while, but you can get back to squatting again. That doesn't necessarily mean in the diet world, that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, you've got diabetes and you eat way too much sugar and seed oil. It doesn't mean you can go back to that. Even if you get normal numbers and would be considered diabetes in remission, you can't go back to eating the way you did. So it's not a cure. It's a rehab. You're rehabbing and reteaching your body to do things. So Keto Rehab came about. One, it was hard to find a name, and I wanted a name, and that made the most sense. And it helps a lot of mental health, this ketogenic diet. It can help people lose weight. It can help with autoimmune diseases, mental health, concussion, all of these things. Ketone does a great thing. And or ketogenic diet does a great thing, and it can vary from person to person, especially depending on what your goals are. So it's a class, it's a broad spectrum. I'll say, this is more for a mental health person, this is maybe more for weight loss. These are some things that you can tweak. The goal is to
Sure.
get this look at it. And the reason I want it to be a group class is when it comes to patients, I'm one-on-one with them. They're paying me one-on-one for my time. And I'm like, geez, I repeat myself a lot, the same information. And what I also do without giving away patients, health histories or anything or names, HIPAA compliant, I share other patients' experiences because, hey, this kind of sounds similar to what you're doing. This is what this person chose to do, and that's what helped. So in the community setting, when you are in practice as a doctor, it's practice, it's over and over and over. In a group setting, you get way more practice in that time. And I want people to become their own best doctors. So you may hear what somebody else is doing and it helps, or I may give you information and you go, oh, that's why that worked or didn't work. And I want you to be able to apply it to you in your own life because everyone is at a different point in their life. Everyone has different relationships, different stress, different sleep. All of those play big factors into people's overall health and ketogenic diet. So I don't even remember what your question was. The point of that name is I want people to rehab their mitochondria. That's the ultimate.
I love it. No, that makes a lot of sense because, me learning all this stuff I've had to dive into. I had no idea what mitochondria was, and I think that's part of the other goal here is to really educate people on and
Mhm.
how our bodies work, how they're supposed to work. That's not really taught to us, right?
Yeah.
And so this kind of leads me into another segue question about our food system, right? Do you think there's anything wrong with it?
I think everything's wrong with it. I'm not a farmer. I would love to actually have a farm, and I like regenerative farming because it's giving back to the land and the topsoil. I'm not a farmer though, so I don't really have experience. There are farmers that do what's called CAFO they're more like the standard. I don't remember what CAFO stands for, but it's more the standard of cows live out on the grass for 3/4 of their life, and then they end up eating corn and soy right before they are harvested. And regenerative is grass all the time, and
Sure.
out and
Okay.
about and eating these different things, and they poop and they regenerate the land. That would be ideal. I think the biggest problem is the way our money subsidizes our food system and how that's wrapped into pharma. I think that's the biggest issue. Some good people right now that are finally speaking out are Casey and Callie Means. I like a lot of their information. But this has been going around for a long time, and hopefully people are getting more educated on it. So yes, we give kids cereal. We give them non-nutrient dense foods, no nutrition in that whatsoever. We jack up their insulin, and then we go tell them to sit under fluorescent lights for a day and don't move. Talk about wanting to kill a brain. It's not good. So yes, there are big issues. And then you go to the hospital. Oh, you got an appendix out. Let me give you some sugary jello and this cheesecake and this ice cream. It's insanity. So yes, I think there are major things wrong with our food system. But I would go down the Callie Means and Callie and Casey.
Yeah, Kelly and Casey.
Yeah, brother and sister, love what they're doing. So
They did some great work. And I love what you said about helping people be their own best doctor, because ultimately that is your goal, right? You don't want them to come see you forever. You want them to be able to identify things for themselves. And in this class, that's your goal, is to educate people as to how their body systems are supposed to work, how it interacts with food, and why it's presenting in their body the way it's presenting, right? Because it presents differently in everybody.
yeah,
Um,
you and I are different.
yeah,
I'm envious. I'm
clearly.
envious how easy you can get your ketones up, and me, I'm like, you know, nibble, and I have a tough time with it. So there's clearly, I have different history and what's going on and current lifestyle. But yeah, you and I are
Yeah.
even different.
I think that's what I love about you the most is I've been able to really fully calm down, understand that we are all different. Our bodies are all different. We are technically the same, but what we've done to them is different. And so having to go back and kind of reverse engineer things is what I've loved, what you've been able to do with me and in this class. So, I'm really excited for other people to get the information as well. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we leave? Because I know we're on borrowed time here, and I
Yeah.
want to keep to your time. Is there anything else you would like to add before we end?
Well, one thing I'll say is I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I do not sugarcoat things because we don't like sugar-coated things. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't shame you, but I want you to learn from it. And so when people come to this class, you are participating in a class. It is a group effort. And for all of us to benefit, we all have to participate. I am not everybody's cup of tea because I just don't sugarcoat. People in my family have come from really hard things and they pulled themselves up and nobody saved them. So my goal is to make a stronger world. People need to, if you don't control what goes into your mouth, you're really not controlling anything in your life. I want to create strong human beings, and I do have a tougher approach. I mean, I'm just not so soft. I can hear, I empathize, and I can see what's going on, but I also hold up the mirror and say, hey, you know, what about this? Or this is going on. Here's a different way to look at it. But that's it. Yeah, I would
No,
love
I
to be
love that.
helpful, but if I'm not
I
your cup of tea. I'm not your cup of tea.
no, you said it perfectly. So well said. If you can't control what's going in your mouth, then you're not in control, which means we have a lot of victims out there, and that's
Yes,
not going to build a strong society at the
correct.
end of the day.
Yep.
So I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to let me interview you. I
Yeah.
know there's still a lot more questions that I'd like to go through. We'll say that for another time. So thank you so much, Julie.
And the best part is I'm interviewing you next so that people can hear because we have
Yeah.
totally different stories. And I can't wait to share, what's going on with you or let you share what's going on with you.
You know what? Me too. It's a long time coming. I've had a lot of people ask me some questions that I'm not prepared to answer quite yet because I'm still in the learning process as well, and I don't want to give misinformation out. So, stay tuned, and you'll hear my story.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Okay. Bye bye.